Good morning.
Hi. Oh, hold on.
Hi, good morning, Lori.
Hello, good morning.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Chad Hooper and I'm the president of the board of the South Philly Food Co-op. For this upcoming election, or rather general membership meeting, we have a ballot. And on that ballot are some items, but chief among them are a recommendation from the board to adopt a slate of bylaws. The co-op is operating with bylaws currently that the member owners last affirmed in October of 2018. That document was created as we were working to set up the store and sort of guided us over these last 10 years. And now that we're at a very exciting place in our project where we're just about to open, we found ourselves reviewing our bylaws and seeing how they made the board's work challenging. There were some places where they're sort of out of date and where they won't be practical for the store when it's operating. There are some other areas where they were just repetitive, exclusionary, and we found a way to sort of conform with the ethos of cooperative grocers throughout the nation, as well as extend some additional rights to the member owners that were not clear in the past. So if I may, I was going to just walk through some top level goals of our review project and how we sort of arrived at this document. And then I'd love to answer any questions anyone may have because this is, it's a big deal. These are our founding documents. The bylaws are sort of like a constitution for our co-op, and then all of our policies and things like that will inform how our store operates when we open very shortly. So the board of directors impaneled last year a governance committee, and I'm fortunate enough to chair the governance committee this year. That committee is tasked with like all of this sort of legal work, and we house all of the sort of the rules, and we manage that aspect of our business. The goals of our rewrite were to first conform with industry standards throughout the cooperative network, so that makes it easier for our store to work with other stores. It makes it easier for us to gauge our performance, as well as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has some unique business environments for nonprofit cooperative grocers as well. And so we wanted to be sure that our bylaws included all the information that the Commonwealth would like to see. We studied the bylaws and governance structures of regional co-ops in this part of Pennsylvania. There were about 7 that were included as part of our study. And we found that there were a lot of places where our existing document aligned, but talked itself in a circle. For example, the current bylaws are a 10-page document. We were able to sort of streamline that down to 6. The board is also really passionate about ensuring that these policies are accessible to everyone in our community. And so as part of this general membership meeting for the first time, the co-op has issued plain language bylaws that are written at a 5th grade level in American English. And we anticipate having those translated into other languages as well, so that our entire community can participate. So some of those standards and things that we needed to go back and sort of flesh out were first, and some of this is like the format of the document. We wanted to be sure that the that the bylaws header included conformed with what the Commonwealth likes to see. We wanted to include language around unclaimed funds. So if a member, owner, investor equity, and we just never hear from them ever again, we needed to have an established process for that. And then also we wanted to just, now that we're going to be operating, we wanted to include the patronage dividend language now. It's true that when we pay a patronage dividend is at a time when we are profitable, and it's true that the board does not foresee us, having the opportunity to pay one imminently, as we're just starting our business. But this allows us as member owners, and I think of us as like the founding class of member owners because we all bought in to an idea, that this allows us now to have the structure built out so that when the store is in a position to pay a dividend, we as owners don't have to come back together to build out this part of the document. It will already be there, and already includes the language that the federal government, the state government, the IRS, like what they all require us to say. We wanted to expand our non-discrimination statement. We do not discriminate here at the South Philly Food Co-op, but we felt our bylaws listed like very specific axes on which we would not discriminate, and we wanted to just plainly state that we don't discriminate against anyone. As long as they're eligible to be an owner, then you can be an owner. We also wanted to be sure that our founding documents were gender neutral. And then some of the larger changes were the current bylaws allow the board to unilaterally increase equity based upon inflation. And so we've proposed removing that. And then we've also, the current document requires mediation to resolve a dispute. And the current board feels that those sorts of mediation clauses preclude people from their right to go to court. We are proud of our store and confident that we will not need to resolve a dispute in that way, but we just didn't feel that the mediation clause aligned with our values. So this allows a member owner in a dispute with the co-op to exercise any right that they want to. It doesn't forbid mediation. It just allows any other remedy as well. We also work to clarify the appeal rights for, these are extreme situations when someone may be removed as a member owner or as a director or as an officer of the board. We wanted to clarify that process and the appeals process involved. This document also is updated to reflect just the nature of our current reality where we're meeting electronically and voting electronically, and not everyone can be everywhere at the same time. We've hosted our first general membership meetings exclusively virtually during this time. So we wanted to be sure that when we're counting people for quorum or inviting folks to meetings to vote on things, that the bylaws allowed us maximum flexibility for format and options. We also wanted to clarify our signature authority. This is a funny little hiccup in our bylaws currently, is that everyone on the board is empowered, if the board so empowers them, to sign a document on behalf of the co-op. But what that means in our board work is that we've been, and I know that that's not a transparent process, the board is working behind the scenes all the time, but it means that we have to issue resolutions for signature authority a lot. And that just slows us up, and it makes a lot of unnecessary work. So in the current document, and what aligns with the other areas, is that this empowers the president to sign documents on behalf of the co-op, and then also allows the other members of the board and the general manager to sign documents with the board's consent. And I don't think that it was just sort of like an unintentional oversight in how it was originally drafted. We also are simplifying our notice periods. Some of you may have noticed that when we host a general member meeting, to vote for directors, there's a lot of advance notice, whereas for this meeting, there isn't, and it's because sometimes the bylaws require 60 days notice or 30 days notice, or 30 days notice of an agenda and then 20 days notice of its contents. We found ourselves getting tripped up in all of the days. So in the new bylaws document, you'll see uniform timeframes. We landed on 4 weeks. We felt 4 weeks was fair as a minimum, of course, that's the floor, not the ceiling. So this will make it easier for our board and for future boards to interpret the bylaws. It also makes it easier for member owners to know when its board isn't doing the right thing. So everything is at least 4 weeks in advance. Of course, we've also had during this year a lot of times where the board has had to meet emergently because just, you know, the situation's been changing, especially in the springtime. There was so much uncertainty with regard to the pandemic. And we wanted to be sure that the board had a clear path to taking actions outside of a board meeting when it's an emergency. And an example of when that has happened this year had to do with the Small Business Administration's Economic Injury and Disaster Loan Program, or EIDL it's called. Those were emergency loans that the co-op was able to apply for, but the timing of how rapidly we needed to do that caused us to have to sort of trip over ourselves to get those meetings scheduled. And we also wanted to be able to call emergency meetings of the board when an action without a meeting requires like more discussion, right? Because an action without a meeting is mostly us going back and forth on email or over the phone. And sometimes we need to pull all of us into a room to put our heads together to deal with something that was unexpected. So the bylaws now create a path for that. We've also modernized and unified the quorum requirements. So a quorum is just the minimum number of people who need to be in a room in order for a decision to be made. There were different levels of quorum in the current bylaws, and it becomes difficult to determine, you know, how many folks in the space are a shareholding owner. We would have to first in the Zoom room go check to be sure that everyone here is allowed to vote, and then take the vote. And we just found that to be a little clunky. So here, because we've adopted this digital voting platform and it's been working really well, and it's really increased the participation of owners in our votes, we felt that when people cast their vote virtually and they feel that they have enough information to do that, that they should be considered as having attended the meeting for quorum purposes. Because apart from voting, right, the rest of the meeting is just us sharing information. We're also, just as an aside, committed to this sort of format where we're recording our sessions so that we can distribute them later. And we hope that that will continue so that all of you out there can watch us at your leisure rather than having to cut out time on specific days that may not be convenient. And then finally, we wanted to refine eligibility for the board of directors. I'm not trying to make this a more exclusive club, but we just wanted to be sure that future boards are protected. One example is if, let's say, an employee of the store is terminated for cause. Under the current bylaws, that employee could then run for the board of directors and actually become the general manager's boss, in effect. And we didn't think that that necessarily was right. So we wanted that to be clear. We're also proposing to reduce the maximum number of directors from 13 to 11. We currently have 10 directors, and 13 just seems like a lot of wrangling. 9 is usually the ideal, but we wanted to have the spread in case there's additional interest. We also wanted to simplify the procedure to remove a director and to remove an officer. This is really like my personal perspective as your board president. I do not feel entitled to serve as your board president. I think it's a privilege. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be the board president who will open this door. But I think that my peers on the board of directors should be able to at any time remove me from this role. And so I propose that officers are subject to simple majority votes of the board to step down into their regular director role with or without cause. Whereas directors, we would like a higher threshold because you as member owners elected the directors. And I don't believe that the directors should have the authority to just override the will of the membership. We would need a higher threshold for that. And I think we're proposing 2/3 here to remove a director. And then that's really about it. We're also, we're trying to work to be sure that the document was clear, that board meetings are public meetings, and that the minutes of our meetings are public. And so this document very concisely commits to how we will notify the members of meetings that are coming up and how they will be marketed in our store physically. And Lori's also very good about sending out emails and reminder emails about this as well. We don't expect that to change. But we wanted people to have more accessibility and awareness to when the board is meeting, and have a commitment that within 20 days of our meeting, we'll be able to produce minutes for everyone to review. I think that that's pretty much like all of the changes. I know that that was a very dense sort of chunk of information. So I'd love to hear from everyone if anyone has any questions, and I'd love to be able to answer them.
Good morning, Chad. I was wondering, is there somewhere that we can see the amended document? I know the existing bylaws are on the website.
I'm so sorry, Lisa. Thank you for asking that. I meant to put the link in the chat when everyone came in, and I just forgot. So excuse me a minute while I do that. I apologize. Okay, I'm sending, this is the proposed document. And I'm putting this in the chat, if that's okay. Oops, I don't think that's gonna be a good link. One more time with feeling. Oh, thank you, Lee. Lee inserted the plain language version. And then here. Oh, and Maria says that the first link worked also. Okay, so the first link is the proposed document, and the second link is the plain language version that we had prepared, because bylaws have a very specific legal sort of vocabulary. And Lisa, let me know as you look through that if you have any questions, okay?
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course. Lee Goldenberg is asking in the chat how the bylaws can be amended in the future. And so we've actually made it a little bit easier for the member owners to amend the bylaws. Currently, it requires a 2/3 vote of those who attend a meeting called for the purpose of amending the bylaws. We wanted future groups, once the store is open, to have a clearer path. So in the proposed document, either the directors, as we are today, the directors can vote to propose a change to the bylaws, or member owners can, as a group, petition the board for that kind of request. So currently they can be, well, like if we were to adopt the future document, how we would amend the bylaws going forward is just with a simple majority vote of the member owners who participate. An amendment would be proposed by either the board, or 15% of the active member owners can sign on to petition a change to the bylaws. And then that amendment we would propose again, we would publicize. I told you we're using a simplified timeframe method of 4 weeks. So prior to the voting process, everyone would have 4 weeks to review, discuss, digest, and then we would hold the vote. The board would schedule that and let everyone know how. That's what we're proposing. And as I said, currently, the amendment process has a higher threshold, which requires 2/3 vote of the shareholding members present and voting at a meeting, including like those who cast an electronic ballot. I understand why in the original document we were using a 2/3 threshold, but we feel now that this bylaws document, because it's so inclusive and gives the store a lot of flexibility in how it is led, that a simple majority vote to change the bylaws would be sufficient to protect the organization going forward. And thank you, Lee, for that question. What other questions are out there?
So I do have one concern that if the membership fees are going up with inflation, I've noticed that Pennsylvania's minimum wage has not increased with the keeping up with inflation. Does that mean that for potential member owners that despite wages being stagnant, that will kind of bar them from membership? Or is the co-op going to work with groups to help raise the minimum wage in Pennsylvania, or at least in Philadelphia? I know the 15 an hour is only for city employees, and a lot of non-city jobs have had some temporary raises, but then other jobs have been furloughed. So it does seem that people are a little bit all over the place in wages. So is that something that's in consideration, or is this just going to be not considering wage changes or stagnation?
Thank you, Cam. So the current document has this inflationary permission. The proposed new document removes that. It just doesn't seem necessary, and it seems very cumbersome to, the co-op has never exercised that inflationary like increase measure. As far as like the accessibility component, and I know, to reveal to the group, I know that Cam is a very involved member of our Food Justice and Equity Committee, and I thank you for all that you have done there. We have our community equity funds help subsidize the rate of, that it costs to buy into the co-op, and we're continuing that program. I'm actually also founding a nonprofit this month that will subsidize cooperative shares from like a charity kind of perspective. And that'll be open to everyone in Philadelphia, not only for this co-op, but for any co-op. Because I did feel that, exactly as you were saying, even at $15 an hour, right, that's not a very livable wage, even in Philly. But I still think that somebody who's earning $15 an hour should be able to participate in any of the co-ops in our county. And that piece of that like financial accessibility is very important to me. So the bylaws here actually will allow Lori flexibility to determine any sort of payment plan that she wanted to design, even if they were hand tailored to each individual owner's situation. if we were to adopt these bylaws. In the current system, the board would have to just approve such a payment plan. So it's not like a major change, but we wanted just Lori to be able to, on the fly, you know, make a choice, because everyone's situation is different and we can't predict, you know, how anyone will even recover from this moment. And I hope that I've answered your question. Like, please ask me a follow-up.
I don't have any follow-ups yet.
Okay, that's fine. What other questions does everybody have? Don't be shy. And Allison has shared just her gratitude in the chat. I love outing Allison as our founding president. I don't know why, we barely know each other, but I am so appreciative of your continued involvement. It's just a testament to how much we all care about this. For those of you who've been working on this for the full decade, it's incredible to me. Having been president for just about 3 months, I already feel like I've been here a decade. And please don't be shy. I know that a bylaws talk is not super fun. It's like talking about the fine print on like signing up for Facebook. But I think that, I don't know, I'm proud of our board. Everyone worked really hard on getting the bylaws to align. We wanted everyone in Philly to, when they go from co-op to co-op, you know, we work together, we don't compete against one another. We wanted Philadelphians to have a similar experience if they were to, you know, move through the co-op stores, or, you know, someone in Westchester, they're opening a co-op, you know, they're in the process. And I think about someone from that store coming up to Philly and shopping in hours, and, you know, seeing what's different, but also having the comfort of knowing just that the cooperative culture has some continuity from place to place. And that's, I think, what I'm most proud of. The bylaws allow us to be.
Hey, I have one nuanced question that maybe I should know the answer to, but because we have some other votes coming up with this GMM, will all of those votes be subject to the current standing bylaws, right? These bylaws wouldn't take effect until future votes.
Yes,
right?
Thank you,
Okay.
Lee, for that question. It's actually, and because I've been so involved in the process of drafting the document, I find myself in my brain sort of conflating them now. Like, we're gonna have to have a session of like a deep dive into it. But yes, it's hard to adopt a clean slate of bylaws like in one's brain, because you have to separate that the document is being adopted under the current rules. Yes, so the vote that's coming up is subject to the current bylaws, not this proposal. This proposal would come into effect on October 2nd if it were adopted by the members on the vote on the 1st.
Great. So could you just review from the standing bylaws how many people we would need to vote to pass the to adopt the new ones, just so we can understand as we're talking to friends and neighbors to get folks engaged in voting in this on this ballot?
Sure. So under the current document, a quorum is 50 shareholding members. It's 10% or 50 shareholding members, whichever is less. So currently we have more than 1,300 owners. So 50 is the minimum for quorum. And we would need 2/3 voting in the affirmative to adopt the bylaws change. So that's roughly like 34 yays out of 50. But that's all that we would need to see. 50 ballots then means that we have a valid election. There are other ballot items that are not subject to the 2/3 threshold, only the bylaws are. So for example, like you'll see on the ballot the prior meeting minutes from the GMM that we have to vote to like affirm that we're accepting those minutes. Adopting meeting minutes is subject to a simple majority vote. So then we would only need 26 of the 50 participants to adopt the meeting minutes. And so that is an example of why I think that it's good that we move to just simple majority so that future boards aren't having to manage different thresholds on the same ballot.
I have a question related to minutes. This is actually very similar to my previous question. Is there a place where meeting minutes are available to us, or will they just be like emailed out one by one after the meetings occur?
So the intention is that we will post them on the co-op website, like under a tab for like the board's meeting minutes. That seems to be what the other co-ops in the area have been doing. And I hope that that's acceptable to the group here. And I'm certainly open to distributing it in other formats as well.
I think putting them on the website makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Lisa. Lori shared in the chat, and thank you, Lori, for this, that Lori is our general manager, if you haven't had an opportunity to meet her. Lori said that once the pandemic is over, she will probably create a minutes binder so that those without internet access can review them in the store. You know, we're limited to not having people sort of congregate at this time, but that will be a nice add-on for people who, you know, would need to see it, you know, prefer to see it in writing. And Lori, I'm available to help you. We can even try to issue plain language minutes too. That's something that this is me volunteering for that here in the recorded session for forever. So I have an ask for those of you here. This vote is really important to us, and it's been a very long time. There is a member owner out there who became a member owner more than 10 years ago. And now that we're on the verge of opening, and not to get too ahead of our messaging, but just know that it's very, very, very close. I would love for each of us to tell someone we know about the co-op. If you know another member owner, let them know that this meeting is important, and that we have a big ballot that's coming. We expect it to go out on the 20th or 21st. So we're holding these sessions ahead of that because we want all the owners to have as much information as possible so they cast an informed ballot. But spread the word. That's my ask. And from Lori in the chat, our store open goal is 1,400 owners, which I cannot even believe because I remember way back in the day, not so long ago, when it was only 1,200. And we've been so blessed to have so many supporters here, early adopters, and we hope to get to 1,400 by opening day. So if you know anyone who would like to help, the best kind of help that we could have right now is a new member owner, someone else to buy a share. Lee is sharing that we signed our lease with only 650 owners, and we've more than doubled that since. So this is some fantastic momentum in our community. Christine is asking, how many are there now? And I believe that we're, and Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the last I saw we were at 1,335. Okay, 1,335. So just 65 to go to meet our goal. It's an amazing thing. And Allison asked about the other things that are coming up on the ballot. And Allison, we are holding another recorded session for the equity issue on Tuesday at 5 o'clock in the same environment. We're also going to post the recording of that session on the South Philly Food Co-op's Governance Committee's YouTube channel, so that we can distribute the recording so people can watch it, you know, ahead of their vote or while they're considering their ballot. Most of the board now has participated in an FAQ document that contains both like written and graphic information to walk through the other ballot measure. And so we'll be publishing that and distributing it soon. Lori has shared in the chat the link for that session. And Allison, I hope you can come to that, but if not, like I said, we will be sending out the recording. Okay, thank you, Lee. And as we, you know, with our last 7 or so minutes, I'd love to answer any other questions you have. They don't have to be about the bylaws. Thank you, Colleen. Have a nice day.
Okay, so I've finally had a chance to actually look over the new bylaws in the new language, and it's a suggestion. And I don't want to give you more work, Chad, but in the non-discrimination clause, I mean, it is wonderful. We don't discriminate. Sadly, knowing the legal loopholes of those who do you feel like that section could be expanded in a way to make it more explicit. Like, we don't discriminate, including for reasons of.
So the legal version of the bylaws, actually,
Okay.
Ian does address this.
Okay.
So I just want to share the standard language, which we thought was interesting when we did our review.
Uh-huh.
The standard language said something like, membership shall be open without regard to any characteristic that does not directly pertain to a household's eligibility, period. That's like the full sentence.
Right, actually, yeah, I'm reading along with you.
Yeah, but we felt that sentence, and really what that means, right, is that the only, like, quote unquote discrimination that occurs is that the shareholding member has to be 18 years or older, or an emancipated minor. The reason for this, of course, is that a co-op share is literally a share in a business. Each of us own a company. We own a part of a company. And so minors can't, unless they're legally emancipated, can't really serve in that capacity. But we did have in the governance committee a talk about that one clause. And we felt that in the, just like you said, Ian, and I'm so glad that you brought it up. Just as you said, that as we talk about non-discrimination statements, there is language that people expect to see. And so we didn't want to remove that. And so we actually added to the template from our consultant this other clause that those characteristics include, but are not limited to, gender, gender identity, race, health status, national origin, relationship status, sexual orientation, disability, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and religion. Just to give a sense of how expansive we mean for this to be interpreted. So that section 2.1 eligibility should be the only qualifier.
Yes, I see that. Thank you.
Thank you. No, and thank you. It's an excellent question. I'll share also, like, just from an inclusivity perspective, we've been speaking a lot about how the board, the South Philly Food Co-op board has like a unique culture. It's always been like very professional in like the traditional sense. A lot of our board, works in very professional like sort of fields. And so it caused our communication to be at like a certain level that we felt was now excluding others in our community who may have like just different levels of literacy, and like, there are plenty of people in our community with like limited English proficiency. So we're trying to really focus now on where we must use legalistic language that can be dense and difficult to read. We will use it, but where we don't have to do that, we're committed to like keeping things at a 5th grade level for American English and then translating at that level so that others in our community can access this too. And so that's a change that you'll see. It's something we're just seeding this year, so it will take us time before we can fully realize like what we feel the goal is. And so Maria was sharing that in America, 8th grade is like the average reading level, but in Philly it's 5th, and that's why we're striving for that. Lori had bubbled up also to Ian's point on the discrimination. We actually have additional protections on discrimination. We have an ends policy that we've adopted. That's like sort of what our guiding light, how like anything the board decides to do, we're holding up to our ends and asking, does this decision get us closer to those end goals? And that sort of equity and treating people as people and seeing them in their humanity is one of the ends. We also maintain a policy register that limits what the store can and cannot do, and the store cannot discriminate on numerous axes against any customer, any member of the staff, any volunteer, contractor, or anything like that. Last year, we actually expanded the group of people. I think it talked about like employees, owners, and volunteers, but I think it did not include like third-party contractors and things like that. So we wanted to be sure that everyone the co-op interacts with at all times can enjoy those same protections. I know that we're here at 10:45, and that was the scheduled end time, but I would love to stick around if anyone has any other questions. I'm happy to do that.
Just a tiny add-on when we're talking about the keeping things in a fifth grade reading language. It's kind of funny, but federal law also states that all tax documents must be readable by someone of a fifth grade level.
Yes.
And I don't know if anyone else has had trouble reading or doing their own taxes, but
Ian, I can't tell if you're calling this out because I run the Management Association for the Internal Revenue Service.
did not know that.
But you're right. There's a Plain Language Writing Act that requires us to take a look at those things, and we don't do a good job of it. So I'm the one who's saying it, not you, Ian. What else can I answer? Anything? Well then, I just want to thank everyone for your engagement today and for being here. And if you have any other questions, you can email the governance committee directly. I will put in the chat our email address. It's governance@southphillyfood.coop. And that's the direct line to the governance committee. And we're super excited to hear from all of you. As you can imagine, as like the rule makers, we don't have a super full inbox. Not a lot of people want to talk to us. So please, please, please send us messages. We'd love to talk with you. And if you need any other assistance or anything else, just from me as your board president, I'm here for you. I love to hear from member owners. And I look forward to seeing you all at the meeting on October 1st.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, if you can, on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, we're hosting a similar event. Lee Goldenberg will lead it about the rest of the ballot. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.